Hello and welcome to this week's Lunch and Learn. My name is Allison Knight and I am the health coach at Employee Health Center. Let's get started on eating for a healthy weight. So when we're thinking about healthy food, we're thinking about whole food. And many times when we think about eating for a healthy weight, we automatically think about what? Diets and restricting calories. But there's actually evidence that thinking about dieting causes our brain to think about restricting, and we actually start to overeat the foods we expect that we will no longer be able to eat. And it's not so much about the quantity of the food that we're eating, but rather the quality that we choose. So we want to choose more whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, beans, peas, legumes, lentils. And we want to get away from eating as much processed food, like refined flour, which is found in white bread, white pasta, white rice, and added sugars in granola bars and yogurt and candy bars and cereal, as well as trans fat, which is the fat that's created when you hydrogenate a liquid oil and try to make it more solid, and it's found in fast food, fried food, baked goods, processed foods. So energy balance. This is talking about how do we maintain, lose, or gain. So weight maintenance is an isocaloric diet where the calories that you are taking in are equivalent to the calories that you are expending. Now, if you're looking to make weight loss, this is a calorie deficit diet, meaning that the calories that you're taking in are less than the calories that you are expending. And most people don't want this, but weight gain is when we have a calorie surplus and the calories that we are taking in are more than the calories that we are expending. And so really you want to balance the diet that you eat with the level of physical activity that you do. Or you eat the diet that matches your physical activity level. So resting metabolic rate. There's also the basal metabolic rate, but that involves more intense measures and it would be needed to be done in a lab, whereas resting metabolic rate we can calculate out using this equation here. Your resting metabolic rate is the amount of energy that your body requires to basically exist, to maintain function at rest, and it helps maintain vital organs and systems and doesn't focus on anything else. That accounts for about 70% of your daily expenditure, where another 20% is made up of your physical activity, and the remaining 7 to 10% is a result of food digestion, so that is separate from your resting metabolic rate. You can use the Mifflin-St. Jeor equation here to determine your resting metabolic rate, and so choose the equation that fits you and enter in your weight and height in there to get your resting metabolic rate. Now, your resting metabolic rate is the minimum amount of calories you should have in a day. Sometimes certain apps such as MyFitnessPal or My Diet Coach might have you going too low and may actually have you under your resting metabolic rate, but your resting metabolic rate is the minimum amount of calories that your body requires to stay functionable. And so you want to be giving your body at least that daily. If you do not do this, you can actually see the opposite result where your body starts to hang on to its reserves so that it doesn't starve. From there, we're going to move on to your daily calorie needs. This takes into account your additional calories that are needed based on your physical activity level. So you're going to multiply your calculated resting metabolic rate from the previous slide using the Mifflin-St. Jeor equation, and you're going to multiply that by your physical activity factor. If you are sedentary and you have little to no exercise during your day, throughout your week, you're going to take your calculated resting metabolic rate and multiply it by a factor of 1.2. If you're lightly active and you have light exercise 1 to 3 days a week, you're going to take your RMR and multiply it by a factor of 1.375. If you are moderately active, you are going to take your RMR and multiply it by 1.55. And if you're very active, hard exercise 6 to 7 days a week, you are going to take your RMR and multiply it by 1.725. There's also an additional category for elite athletes, but I did not include that in here since that doesn't fit most of the general population, but be aware that it does exist. From here, we need to calculate out what our nutritional needs are, and this will be the amount of each macronutrient that's needed based on your daily calorie needs. According to the National Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, carbohydrates should account for about 45 to 65% of your daily calorie needs. Fat should account for about 20 to 35%, and protein only accounts for 10 to 35% of your total calories for the day. Now remember, these numbers are a standard and don't necessarily hold true for everyone, but in general, this is the guidelines that we should be following. Carbohydrates and protein contain 4 calories per 1 gram, while fat contains 9 calories per 1 gram. So fat isn't necessarily more fattening than carbohydrates and protein, but fat is more calorically dense per gram than carbohydrates and protein. So to determine your needs for this, you would take your daily calorie needs, which is what we calculated out with your RMR and your activity level factor, and you're going to multiply that by 0.45 to 0.65, depending on where you decide your percentage should lie, and that gives you the amount of calories that should be coming from carbohydrates. And then you'll divide this by 4 to get the number of grams of carbohydrates you need in a day. And you'll do the same thing for fat, using that daily calorie needs, multiplying it by 20 to 35% to get your total calories from fat, and divide it by 9 to get the total grams that you need. And in order to determine, well, what should my percentage be, we will look at our next slide, which gives you your macronutrient ratio. So each individual's ratio is going to vary based on factors like your preference, your physical activity level, and your wellness goal. Carbohydrates are important because they provide fuel for us while we exercise and for the brain. In fact, the brain only runs off of glucose, and it also helps preserve muscle mass. If you are looking for general fitness, you're going to need about 45 to 55% of your calories to be coming from carbohydrates, which is about 3 to 5 grams per kilogram of body weight. To find your weight in kilograms, you're going to take your weight in pounds and divide it by 2.2. Now, if you're looking for weight loss, you're going to use about 45 to 50% of your calories to be coming from carbohydrates, and that is 3 to 4 grams per kilogram of body weight. And in general, you want to choose lower glycemic foods and carbohydrates. So these are foods that do not affect your blood sugar as much. These are going to be those whole grains, high fiber foods. And remember that even though fruit is healthy, some of them do still contain a lot of naturally occurring fructose, which can cause a spike in your blood sugar. For protein, protein is important because it helps build and repair our tissues, and it's also involved in our hormone system as well as our metabolic system. For general fitness, you want 10 to 15% of your calories to be coming from protein, which is about 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. Whereas for weight loss, we actually want to increase our protein intake to that higher amount, about 25 to 30% of our calories coming from protein, and that's about 1.5 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. There is some research that higher protein diets may actually boost the metabolism up to about 100 additional calories per day, roughly 80 to 100 a day. So that does add up. For the fat, this provides organ protection. It also insulates our body, and it's an energy reserve. For general fitness, we want 25 to 35% of our calories to be coming from fat, which is about 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. Whereas weight loss, we're looking at a lower amount of fat, 20 to 25% from our calories, about 0.3 to 0.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. And when we're looking at fat, we're looking to choose those plant-based unsaturated fats and fatty acids like omega-3, and trying to shy away from the saturated fats that are found in animal products like meat and dairy. Now that we've talked about our resting metabolic rate, our total calorie needs for the day, and our macronutrients, we are going to talk about the food groups that will help us get there. So fruit is the first group. This is important because it contains essential vitamins, minerals, and other phytonutrients that we need for overall health. They can be consumed fresh, frozen, canned, or dried. You can eat them cut up, pureed, cooked in a smoothie, however you prefer to consume them. And reminding yourself too that although fresh may be best, you also need to remember where it was sourced, how long it took to get to you. The longer that it travels, the less nutrients it might contain. Frozen is very often flash frozen at its peak ripeness and nutrition level. And so this might be a more affordable option as well as a longer term option. And then canned can also be extremely budget friendly and last longer as well. The thing to note with this is, of course, the sodium and any syrups that may be contained, but simply draining and rinsing can reduce that up to 60%. And the benefits of eating the fruit, whether it's fresh, frozen, or canned, is going to outweigh the additional salt or sugar in there. Men need 2 cups a day after the age of 19, whereas women need 2 cups up to the age of 30, and then only a cup and a half after the age of 30. An example of a serving of fruit would be 1 cup, so 1 cup of cut up fruit, or half a cup of dried fruit, 32 grapes, or 8 strawberries. Also a small apple or a medium-sized pear. Vegetables also contain a host of essential vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. They too can be consumed fresh, frozen, or canned. You can eat them raw, you can eat them cooked, you can eat them prepared in whatever way you think they taste best. For men, they need 3 cups up to the age of 50. After the age of 50, that drops down to 2.5 cups. For women up to the age of 50, 2.5 cups. And after the age of 50, 2 cups. 1 cup of vegetables would be 1 cup of cooked vegetables. Raw, dark green leafy vegetables, 2 cups is equivalent to the 1 cup serving because it's not packed. A medium-sized bell pepper would be a serving size of a vegetable, or 12 baby carrots are also a serving size. Grains, we have our refined grains and our whole grains. So refined grains are processed and they are stripped of their nutrients, whereas whole grains are unaltered, they are completely intact, and they maintain their endosperm, germ, and bran. There's also kind of a subcategory, which is enriched grains. Enriched grains are refined grains that have been processed and stripped of their nutrients, and then a certain amount is added back in, and they aren't necessarily the same nutrients that were originally in the grain, and they aren't necessarily in the original ratio either. So your best bet is to choose whole when possible, but enriched would probably be a good alternative to refined. You want to try to make half of your grains whole grains for daily consumption. For men, up to the age of 30, 8 ounces is a serving, or is the daily recommendation. Up to the age of 50 then is 7 ounces, and over the age of 50 is 6 ounces, whereas women up until the age of 50 need 6 ounces, and over the age of 50 need 5 ounces. A serving size of a grain is half a cup of cooked oatmeal or rice, preferably brown rice, 1 slice of bread, preferably whole grain, half of a bagel or an English muffin, and about 5 whole wheat crackers or about 6-7 round crackers. Filling up on fiber is important. It's an essential nutrient that the majority of Americans are deficient in. A recent study showed that 97% of Americans do not get anywhere close to the daily recommendation and clock in only about 14 grams of fiber a day, which is about half the daily recommendation. The American Heart Association recommends 25 to 30 grams a day, and from your diet, not from supplements, because the bioavailability and the absorption rate is better with food than with a supplement. Whole grains and nuts and seeds and beans are all great sources, but foods that really pack in that fiber punch include black beans, chia seeds, lentils, raspberries, green peas, pears, and broccoli. So start adding those to your diet so you can pack in that fiber. Bittersweet added sugars. So sugars such as fructose and lactose are naturally occurring when they are found in fruit and dairy. But added sugars are any type of sugar that is not naturally occurring in that food. So even though honey is a natural sweetener or sugar, if it's added into something, it is now an added sugar. The daily recommendation is no more than 9 teaspoons or 36 grams a day for men, and on the flip side, 6 teaspoons or 25 grams for women. Lucky for women, you can remember you need 25 grams of fiber, and you want to limit your added sugars to 25 grams a day. There are more than 56 common names for sugars, which include everything from syrups like maple syrup or malt barley syrup, to nectars, to juice concentrates like apple juice concentrate or grape juice concentrate, and anything ending in ose, so that fructose, lactose, galactose, glucose, dextrose, sucralose, all sugars. Protein foods, you want to choose foods that are leaner, so those meats, poultry, and seafood should be lean or low fat. Eggs, beans, peas, and lentils, nuts and seeds, and processed soy products also fall in the protein foods category. Men need about 6.5 ounces up to the age of 30. 31 to 50 need 6 ounces, and above the age of 50 need 5.5 ounces, whereas women up to the age of 30 need 5.5 ounces, and after the age of 30 need 5 ounces. A serving size is about 3 ounces of meat, poultry, or seafood. It's about 1 egg, or about a 1/4 cup of nuts and seeds, or 1/2 cup of cooked beans, peas, and 1 tablespoon of nut butter or peanut butter is a serving size as well. For dairy, this includes fluid milk products and foods that retain their calcium, so cheese, yogurt, and calcium fortified soy milk is also considered part of the dairy category, whereas foods that do not include their normal calcium ratio are not included in the dairy group. So cream cheese and butter are some examples of that. Men and women over the age of 19 need 3 cups a day. It's also important to note, because dairy can also be higher in saturated fats, that if you're looking for that calcium boost, you can get calcium out of green leafy vegetables. A serving size of dairy is a cup of milk, an 8 fluid ounce container of yogurt, which is mainly the standard size they come in, an 1.5 ounces of hard cheese such as cheddar or Parmesan, or a 1/3 cup of shredded cheese. Oils are not a food group, but they do provide essential nutrients, so they are included. They are fats that are liquid at room temperature, and they contain monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, which are healthy fats that help unclog the arteries and are heart healthy. It is important to note that tropical oils do contain saturated fat, which is otherwise only found in animal products like meat and dairy, and these include coconut oil, palm oil, and palm kernel oil. So even though they were pushing coconut oil for a while, saying it was more heart healthy, still be aware that there is unsaturated fat found in it. A good example also for this is peanut butter. Regular peanut butter that's shelf stable has been hydrogenated, contains hydrogenated oil so that it is shelf stable. If you get the natural peanut butter that is shelf stable, instead of being hydrogenated, they add palm kernel oil to it to make it shelf stable, which contains unsaturated fat. Both trans and unsaturated fat are not heart healthy. Your best bet for this is to get the natural peanut butter that you have to stir. It's separated when you buy it, so the solids are on the bottom and the peanut liquid is up at the top. You have to stir it, and you can either store it in your refrigerator or turn it up or upside down and store it in your pantry, and then you won't need to stir it again. But this does not contain either of those fats. Men up to the age of 30 should limit their consumption to 7 teaspoons a day. After the age of 30 should limit it to 6 teaspoons a day, whereas women should, up to the age of 30, should limit it to 6 teaspoons, and up to the age of, after the age of 30, should limit it to 5 teaspoons. So takeaway tips. The key is to eat a variety and to eat the rainbow, and no, I don't mean Skittles. Different colors mean different essential phytonutrients. So blueberries, red cabbage, those contain anthocyanins, an antioxidant, whereas tomatoes and watermelon contain lycopene, another antioxidant, and they provide different benefits and help support different systems. You also want to include a variety of whole grains like wheat, oats, barley, rye, quinoa, amaranth to up your fiber intake, to improve your heart health, to improve your satiety level, and adding variety can help you stick with eating healthy because it doesn't get boring or bland. Limit your intake of added sugars and instead try to get your sugars from naturally occurring sources like fruit, dairy. Watch your saturated and trans fat intake, which is going to come from processed foods and animal foods, and try to focus on unsaturated fats, which are coming from plant-based oils, olives, avocados, nuts and seeds like walnuts. And overall, the best thing that you can do to eat for a healthy weight is to choose quality over quantity. It's not about restricting and counting calories so much. If we choose to eat foods that are whole foods and might be labeled healthier foods, we are then eating less calories but eating more nutrients. They're nutrient dense, they're not calorically dense, and we might actually eat more food but be eating less calories, and we're going to feel better when we do so. So just remember, choose whole foods quality over processed foods, the amount and the quantity. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're interested in making a healthy behavior change in any of these areas, or you have any questions, you can email me, give me a call, or schedule an appointment with me via the website. Next month, we are going to have a guest speaker from Standard Process to talk about supplements, and we look forward to you joining us then.